Hey, this is Meleika of Evanston Live TV, and we are live right here at First Slice. And I wanted to meet with Misty Witenberg of the 5th Ward. I don't know if many of you are aware of the complaints that she brought against 5th Ward Alderwoman Rue Simmons, but she is here to fill us in. There's a Board of Ethics meeting tomorrow, Tuesday, at 7 p.m. at the city. And if you're living in the 5th Ward or any of the wards in Evanston, you might want to attend that meeting and find out what is actually going on. So I'm going to turn this around here. Hey, Misty.
Hi, Meleika. Hi, Evanston Live. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. You know, there's some serious complaints out there about 5th Ward Alderman Rue Simmons. I was emailed like a list of them. Many of them I was aware of when she announced that she was running for alderman, but there were some in there I was like, ooh, okay, I didn't know about that. And clearly you have been researching, you have been doing your homework to find out what's going on, because you're raising a family right here in the 5th Ward.
I am, yes.
Okay, so again, these are all alleged, so that no one comes after Evanston Live TV. Okay?
Right.
Misty, tell us what is going on.
Right. Well, I first became aware of Sunshine's discriminatory connections early in 2017, and I spoke out against it then. I did see it appear again. I was following it until early this year in January, when they re-upped the grant to Sunshine. Sunshine is Robin's private employer, I should say Alderman Rue Simmons. And as I saw it was approved, I looked into what protections were available because of the likelihood of discrimination. And as I started looking into it, I saw a lot of problematic issues that were happening in conjunction with it. So Tuesday's meeting, tomorrow night's meeting, is a preliminary, not a hearing, I guess you would just say a preliminary meeting to discover jurisdiction because of the breadth of complaints. There are 10 ethics violations of what I believe constitute ethics violations. And then I believe they actually go farther than just negligence into state and federal violations, including fraud, embezzlement, and just other very problematic violations.
Okay, now, I know you don't have anything personal against Ms. Simmons, and you're not running for office again.
Right.
So why don't you tell the people what was your motivation behind the research, doing your homework on these allegations, and then being so solid in, yes, I have enough, that I'm coming forward because it's some solid evidence here.
Right. Well, the discriminatory ties related to Sunshine are something, they're primarily anti-LGBTQ and other human rights, some minor anti-Islamic connections, but those are a little more disjointed. That's a personal interest to me and my family. I also think what's happening in the federal government means that we have to be very conscientious of what could constitute discrimination here in Evanston. I also professionally work for social justice for a consulting firm, and they're not actually involved in this specifically, other than just knowing that I'm doing it. So just to give you a little background, between 2016 and 2017, when Sunshine first became a CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grant recipient, between those 2 years, the city has paid $215,000 to Sunshine, and almost 40% of that has gone directly to Alderman Simmons for her private pay. So that's problematic in many ways. It makes government representatives it's more possible that then they can, be at risk for blackmail or, other problematic quid pro quo deal making in ways that don't benefit Evanston residents as I looked through, in addition to that improper and unjust enrichment, I also noticed that Sunshine as Sunshine Enterprises, which is how we have contracted with them. It's been Sunshine Gospel Ministries, DBA, which means doing business as Sunshine Enterprises. That Sunshine Enterprises has actually been operating illegally as they're not registered and they've never filed with the IRS. So that's problematic, again, in its own way.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Let me get this straight. So you're saying it's alleged.
I am alleging.
Okay, so we know aldermen, they don't make very much money. Their salary is what, $15,000? Maybe not even that much.
I think it's a little less than that, actually.
Yeah, less than that a year. And you're saying that Robin received $215,000.
No, not quite. $215,000 has gone directly to her private employer, Sunshine. It's more in actuality, so what's come out of that grant funding is somewhere around a little more than $83,000 to Robin. So that's about 40%. And it also puts her per classroom hour teaching at about 773% higher than the average classroom hour pay of Illinois teachers. So it's a substantial paycheck for her. The problem has also been that the timeline of how this happened. So Alderman Simmons was appointed as an official by the city in 2015, and almost immediately after, she helped to seek out and bring Sunshine on board as a CDBG recipient. After she was elected, she joined every committee, 4 of them, that have to have any governance or advisement or make recommendations on behalf of those funds to the city. So she put herself in a place where not only did she have influence over what funding earmarked for her private salary through her employer, but she also was then able to have influence over entities that are competing for those dollars. So just to back up a little bit, CDBG funding is intended to provide affordable housing and economic opportunity to low to mid-income residents. Any money that is going to pay officials is not an appropriate use, other than being very negligible. And the reporting has also, I have alleged, has been falsified. It's certainly not been consistent, and it hasn't been sufficient. It's been negligent in how things have been reporting. In 2016, just based on what the contract says it will pay per student, the city overpaid by $20,000. Yeah, $20,000. So that's 2016 alone, and that happened again in 2017 through adding more people to the class and what appeared on the midpoint rosters, calling people resident-based businesses that there isn't documentation to show that they have a physical presence in Evanston and they aren't residents. Some beneficiaries were counted twice in 2 different cohorts in the same year. And there's been very little reporting on how many jobs have actually been created or businesses helped. We're all familiar with a couple of the businesses that have been helped, but they're not sufficient for what the federal guidelines require. And I've only seen one instance where they specified a job created in these updates that they give the city, and that job created was of Robin Simmons as administrator of Sunshine.
Okay, wow, that's a lot.
It is.
That's a lot to take in. And for those who, might not be as business savvy, it's like, whoa, okay. So what do you think should happen from this point? Because you clearly did your research on this. And I know that, oh my gosh, there were so many people during the campaign who came forward with pretty much the same information. You went a little further than they did in terms of the research, but those complaints fell on deaf ears. And so, what do you think is the reason now all of a sudden it is being brought to the Board of Ethics?
Well, I try not to speculate a lot on these issues, but as I was doing the research, I noticed that there had been complaints, both officially and unofficially, to the Ethics Board, to the City Council, many complaints by a handful of people, and nothing has been done. And I certainly think that the city needs to be looking into that. Why, even after people raised concerns, the city wasn't investigating, taking a closer look at these things that are very clearly lined out. When I noticed, I guess when I was doing the research, I wasn't sure how to bring it to the city. I knew that if I spoke up in a city meeting, that often doesn't bring action. I could have gone directly to file a suit, but I was hoping that by going through the ethics committee, that they will have an opportunity to look into it, investigate it on their own. That would be ideal for me, is if they pursued action on their own, that the city could be accountable for what it's let happen. And if they don't pursue what seems to a reasonable person to be the correct action, then I will take it further. But I definitely wanted to give them an opportunity, and also, of course, to give Alderman Simmons an opportunity to speak out to the community, bring about a perspective that clearly I don't have, before taking it further and spending money that's unnecessary for both myself and for the city.
Okay. What do you think would be the just outcome of this situation? What are you looking?
Well, I'm looking for justice, obviously. Whatever violations are taken to be valid, there needs to, we have clear guidelines on how we adjudicate those things, and those are the things that need to happen. If what I'm bringing up is all proven to be correct through the ethics board or whatever entity is going to look into this, obviously Alderman Simmons should be removed from the council. We need to have people in there who are going to have the integrity to do things that are right. I still want to have the business, I still want to be helping micro enterprises, not me personally, but we need to bring in the Urban League and some other entities that can do that. We don't want to create a gap, but there's a way to do that that's not advancing, an extremist ideology through a fundamentalist religious group. Which I haven't actually touched on. When you start looking at the credos of Sunshine specifically, you get into reading things where they're talking about all of their initiatives are to advance biblical justice, and that they want to create Christ-like disciples, and other things that I think can make someone a little nervous when you start talking about city funding to those things. Oh, poor Meleika, you've been holding your hand up all this time.
It's okay. This is important. Keep going.
So I would like to have the city look into what's lacking in oversight, how this could have happened for so long, and if there are others involved, or that Alderman Simmons has been coerced by some way, maybe she's not alone to blame. We need to be looking into how to handle that. If these are people who are seriously making decisions that are improper like this, then they have no place in the office either. We're in a budget crunch. We cannot be wasting government funds. We need to make sure that they are going to the people who need them and can use them to fill in the gaps that are lacking from other social services.
It's taken a lot of courage. You have a lot of courage to come forward, because we all know Rue Simmons, she has an army that no matter what will go to bat for her. I don't even know how to pose the next question on this one. Where I was going, maybe I won't go down that path. Now, there were some other allegations. So we covered the embezzlement. Then you were talking about the pump situation, which I think many people might not be aware of.
Yeah, so I had spoken out earlier on what's called WEPSIC, which is the West End Pumping Station Impact Team, I think is the name, or it's a task force of West End residents who have had their open space, what was budgeted to be a park, now become a municipal pumping station. Now, they came to me to ask them to get their word out on the station because they hadn't had public notice. The city had used a municipal use exemption to create a permitted use so they could skip those steps. The municipal use is not valid in this case because it requires that a station be owned and operated by the city, and the station will be owned by the commission. It's Morton Grove Niles Water Commission. I could say personally, I'm certainly in favor of water sales for Evanston and for the revenue. And if this pump goes in the location they've cited, that's fine with me, assuming that they followed the protocol that's required in city code, and as they would for pretty much every other neighborhood in this city. When they came to me to help get the word out, I did that. I was not part of the impact team until they came to me to let me know they had tried to file an appeal and the city had refused to accept that appeal. At that point, I made a decision to join their team so that I could help facilitate the city's acceptance of that appeal. I was not part of the appeal specifically, I just helped them get the city to accept it. And I think that's, we need to be looking into how the city failed to adhere to its own code in that way too. I think really the moral of the story is that there is a lot of oversight that's lacking in community action, city action, that now the community is having to research and the people who are supposed to be enforcing the code, we are now having to enforce it upon them. And I don't see a lot of work on the city to overcome those wrongs. I see a lot of doubling down and protecting of their own. And I am in no way implicating every staff and city member. I think that most people are there, they volunteer their time or they're paid very little for what they're doing, and there's so much information. It would be easy to miss something. But there are clearly people who are pushing for actions that have a more deliberate and focused choice. And when those actions are wrong, we have to have somebody within the city who's going to point those out and make sure that they are advocating for residents and not only for the city. And that is not in place now.
What would be the reason you think that the city did not address that situation? What do you think would be the reason behind that?
Again, I hate to speculate, but I can tell from the documents that I've seen and the people I've spoken to that Skokie was originally supposed to host this pumping station, and they dropped out sort of in the last minute. I believe it was November, December of last year. And it was a frantic time. We really want to have that revenue, obviously. And, this is where it gets to be a problem when you have a representative who's earning her public and private salary from the city. We don't know. It's possible. It could be blackmail. It could be her just wanting to make things very smooth for the city. There was definitely misrepresentation of what type of notice the citizens were given. There was one Fifth Ward meeting in January that spoke about it, but as there was no correlation between the address of the proposed site and the pumping station, and the Fifth Ward agenda did not include the address, there was no way for those residents to know that that was the meeting in which this was to be spoken. And there was no other meeting until it was brought to City Council. So there was one development and project review on meeting That was February 12th. Again, this was before anyone knew anything about it. This is a meeting that happens at 2:30 during a weekday, so it's not attended heavily by the public. There was one resident there who spoke up against it, and that was Betty Esther. And I have to say, when I look back at the complaints Betty Esther's made, a lot of them are very much in line with what I found to be true or what I'm bringing up myself now. And those concerns have very much gone unheeded. In response to West End complaints after it was passed, they had valid concerns, such as what will happen to property values. So remember that this shore building that's on the site now was to be demolished and made into a public park. That was through our budget, actually extending Beck Park down to Church Street. And very quickly it turned around as to host this municipal station. And I think as they were talking about property values or environmental impact, they didn't really ever get answers to those questions through the city or through our alderman. And as I understand it, I was not at this meeting, but as I've heard from several residents who were, our alderman told those residents that the municipal, the water pumping station would increase their property values, which is just not consistent with any information that's out there. So they're not getting proper due process, and that's just wrong, and the city should care about that, and the city should want to make it right. They should not be in any way making it more difficult for those citizens to get their due process.
You had mentioned Betty Esther. I have sat down with Betty Esther many times. That woman is brilliant. Okay,
I'm convinced Betty Esther is a genius, and I'm trying not to name drop, as she's not actually involved in this complaint, but she has brought up, like I said, officially and unofficially, and she's not the only one. I've heard, Madeline Ducree say things like this, and other residents, and they are on it, and the city would be very wise to give more credence into complaints from not just them, but other residents.
Yeah, I think Betty Esther missed her calling. She should have been an attorney.
She's good. Yeah, she's my new hero.
Okay, so, gosh, there were so many complaints brought against Alderwoman Rue Simmons. What haven't we covered yet?
Oh gosh, it's all. But the complaints that are relevant to the ethics board are all covered in a very long packet that is on the ethics board.
179 pages?
179 from me, 181 when you include the two applications, pages for application, and they're all on the city website now. They were put up last week on the Board of Ethics page. You can read through them. You can attend the meeting tomorrow night. As I said, it's a preliminary meeting to determine jurisdiction. If there is validity, and I feel very certain there will be, then the hearing should be scheduled about 2 weeks after that. It's what I've heard from the city. And that will be the official hearing. And then typically, from my experience, then the verdict is given in the subsequent meeting, which would be in April.
Okay, we just got a comment from Jean Marie. Betty Esther is relentless in the quest for truth, justice, reform, and accountability. This is also very disappointing to hear. Yes, I tell you, Betty Esther missed her calling. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Misty. Is there anything else you want to get out there to Evanston, specifically the 5th Ward? Information they absolutely need to know what you feel is going on that it's very important for them to know.
I guess what I would say is that, I hear complaints often about things that they feel are wrong, and most of the time they're valid, and there are a lot of reasons why people don't go to the city. They may feel like it doesn't do any good, or the process is very confusing. If you can find a way to document what's happening, you absolutely should advocate for yourself and your neighbors, and we need to make sure that we are, as a community and as a city, holding the officials in charge responsible for what they're passing, and especially in this budget crunch time, that they're using their resources fairly. And efficiently so that we're not creating a fiscal crisis.
Okay, and Jean Marie also says, thank you, Misty, for your civic engagement, and Evanston is lucky to have you.
Oh, that's very kind.
Okay, and one more time, for those who were not aware that this was being brought to the Board of Ethics, where can people go? We know it's to the city, but you'd be surprised how many people do not know where they can go get this information, but give them the details for tomorrow.
Sure. So I don't know the exact webpage, but if you go to cityofevanston.org and you type in the search bar, Board of Ethics, scroll down a bit, there will be the meeting date, which is tomorrow, March 20th. There'll be the packet enclosed that has the full packet of allegations and violations that you would click on the PDF that says packet, and the meeting is tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Civic Center, and as I understand there will be many in attendance, so you should probably get there early.
Okay, Evanston Live TV will be there, and as always I open it up to the other side to the story, so Rue Simmons knows that she can, definitely give her side for Evanston Live TV if she so wishes. I know she's refused in the past in terms of these allegations and others, but Evanston Live TV likes to keep it fair to get both sides. But I want to thank you so much, Misty.
Thank you.
I was very impressed with you during your campaign, during the
Yes.
election, and you were a powerhouse on that stage.
Well, I don't know if that's true, but
You were. You touched a lot of people. But thank you so much for your time today.
it's my pleasure. Thank you.
And bringing awareness to the Fifth Ward and to Evanston about your findings, your research, and I know you wouldn't have come forward if you didn't feel confident in all that you found.
Yes, that's true.
Yes, so thank you so much for your courage, and it took courage for you to do what you're doing. I know. I know how it can get when you bring forward information and it's not received. But thank you.
Thanks.
All right, this is Meleika, Evanston Live TV. You all be sure to attend that meeting tomorrow, Tuesday, 7 p.m. at the City Board of Ethics. Allegations brought against Fifth Ward Alderman Rue Simmons, and let's find out what the heck is going on, okay? So stay tuned, Evanston Live TV.